It's only a kick, a jump, a block. It's only a serve. It's only a tackle, a run. It's only for the fans. After all, it's only pressure. You got this. Adidas.
This episode is brought to you by JLL. Get an insider view into the world of commercial real estate with JLL's podcast, Trends and Insights, the Future of Commercial Real Estate. Whether you're curious about making cities more sustainable, the evolution of office space, or AI opportunities, this podcast will help keep you a step ahead. Tune in for candid conversations with business leaders about the biggest trends impacting how we live, work, and play. Subscribe to Trends and Insights now at jll.com/podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. An unlikely friendship begins in the Paramount Plus original movie Little Wing, starring Brooklyn Prince with Kelly Riley and Brian Cox. Reeling from her parents' divorce, Caitlin steals a valuable bird to save her home, but instead forms a bond with the owner, leading to a new outlook on life. Little Wing, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free. Rated PG-13.
Hey everybody, it's Matt Kelly back again with a little bonus episode on the feed that you're listening to. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a sociopath who has way too many podcasts, and I've recently added yet another podcast under my belt. That is YAOK. Now, you won't hear my voice specifically on this podcast, but you will hear the voices of two good friends of mine, Alyssa Lube of the Alyssa Explains It All podcast, and Eric J. Brown, who is the writer of such books as Lose You to Find Me and All That's Left in the World. And the concept of YAOK is that they sit down with YA authors and they talk about their newer books and what got them into writing YA and all the fun, weird conversations that happen along the way. I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek of an episode that we just recently released that I thought was really, really funny. This is like the first 15 or so minutes of the episode. Go and find YAOK on any podcasting app and subscribe to get the full episode of this and the other two episodes that we've released so far. But I'm really loving this show, and I think that if you're a fan of reading and you like young adult novels, it's a great show for you. Tell your friends who are fans of young adult novels to maybe check it out as well. Thank you so much for always supporting the shows that I make, guys. It means the world to me. Thanks.
You are my universe. You are my universe. And I'm just a planet.
Just so you are all aware too, I have somebody. I didn't have windows in my house for I have windows, but there's 3 windows in my house that we had to rebuild, like a bay window, and the times for actually getting replacement windows are so insane that I just basically had no windows on that side of my house, and it's just been like plywood all winter. So they're downstairs building the bench part of it. I told them not to bother me, but we'll see if you.
Wow, you weren't just being dramatic then.
I wasn't being dramatic.
Wow,
no.
that is.
I had no windows. We had to throw. We didn't have to. We choose to. We threw a holiday party, and it's in our dining room. So I was trying to figure out what to do, so it wasn't just this open wound of wood and plywood in our dining room. So we hung floor length tinsel from the
that's cute.
the window,
the
cute. Thing gold, and then put lights in, so it was this little prom wall. It was adorable. And then we just put the drinks in front of it.
Beautiful. No one's gonna notice. They're going straight for the drinks.
Exactly. Now we can talk about books.
Yes.
So today we are here talking with the wonderful and hysterical Ana Gracia, and it's Gracia, not Garcia.
Thank you.
Just make sure everybody knows that.
You know what?
Because there's 2 letters switched. Ana, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for
How
setting
are
me
you
up as
today?
being hilarious, and now there's a lot of pressure on me, and it just feels like I didn't come prepared. I don't know. Should I have jokes ready? I don't know.
Well, thankfully, I mean hilarious as in you're just naturally funny. I think if you were to plan something, I think everything would just flop. It would be terrible.
Like if I just came
I'm
in
not
with
sure.
a tight 30-minute set.
Yeah, I don't think you could do it. I don't. I
No,
feel like
my therapist continues to assert I should be a stand-up comedian, which I think is a bad.
The highest. That's the highest compliment that I could get from a therapist personally. I would be thrilled if I got that. I'd be like, that's been my entire goal in coming to these sessions.
I think it's a bad sign. I mean,
I feel like that's a terrible thing for a therapist to say and be like, "Oh, you're so funny. You should make this your career. This your extremely low-paying career. You're already in publishing. Let's get into stand-up comedy."
I don't know. I mean, I might make more in stand-up comedy. You really don't know.
I guess that's true. How much do open mics pay?
2 drinks?
Yeah, exactly. My boyfriend is a stand-up comedian. I can confirm that they don't make a lot of money.
Guess what? Neither do writers.
You know what? I was watching some of your earlier interviews. I love your haircut, by the way, because I saw it was like longer in some other interviews. It looks so great. I love the little like blonde at the swoopy.
Thank you. I call it
cute.
Midwest Soccer Mom.
I love it. And I saw you were talking about that, like people feel like once you get a publishing deal that you are like a millionaire all of a sudden. I think that's so funny. I guess like now that I've had these conversations, I don't think that way necessarily before. Maybe I did before that. Are people assuming that you are just like rolling in it because you've published a book?
Yeah. I think once like your name is on something, people just assume. It's like actors, right? Like when SAG went on strike and people were like, these actors are millionaires. I'm like 10 of them are millionaires and everyone else is like an extra that gets paid $100 a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's people who like work steadily in like acting and publishing both who still need day jobs or second jobs just to keep themselves afloat. There's some people who like want to be actors and they're in multiple things, but like they are just under that part of the union amount of time that they're allowed to work to get health insurance.
Oof.
And so they have to get a second job to get health insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody's poor except for billionaires, and they're never going to give out their money. So
I think they show the things where it's like they asked people like how, like what percentage of the country do you think makes over like $100,000? And people will be like, oh, I don't know, like 35%. And it's something absurdly low.
Yeah.
Well, really overestimate how much money other people have.
Well, one time actually, my boyfriend was walking around his neighborhood and there were him and I both did a Netflix show, like a reality show. And then we do like content creation stuff, but by no means do we have like 1 million followers. Like it's, we're very like low level on the whole scale of it. But someone had asked him to donate to I can't remember what it was, but they were working on some charity. They had like a clipboard situation and they were getting donations from everyone walking by. So he gave them $30, which like if I'm not like investigating a cause and I just have $30 and I donate the whole thing, like I feel good about that. That's like a good amount of money. And they like heckled him and they were like, we know how much influencers make. You should have more than that. Only $30. And he was like, first of all, you have no idea how much money I make because it's nothing. Like he doesn't really especially it's different for boys than it is for girls, but on these platforms. But yeah, he was like, what a crazy assumption to make that I just have like oodles of money. So weird.
I think that's crazy for anybody to assume about anybody at all.
Yes,
like,
it is.
I think it's
also, I feel like
everyone over their donation.
Yeah.
I know. It was
they could have just said no.
Right.
Or they do what I do, which is like most of the time, if it's a clipboard person on the street, I'm just like, I walk away because they actually, anytime I want to actually donate something, I'm like, okay, well, here, I'll give you this cash. They're like, oh no, we can't take cash. It's only, you have to give us all of your credit card information right now. I was like, absolutely not. No, I'm not going to give out my credit card information to somebody wearing a shirt that also looks pretty crappy on the side of the street in Philadelphia. That could be anybody. It's actually probably a really great scam just to walk around asking for donations.
That's so true. Anyway,
but that's going into my like conspiracy theory, which we talked about last week. So I don't think we should be talking about.
We did delve into that.
Conspiracy theories every podcast.
I mean, there are them. We could.
Yeah,
There,
that's
they were,
true.
it was fun. It was fun conspiracies. Anna, do you have a favorite conspiracy that's like not harmful? Like
Oh,
anything
I'm
that's
sure I
fun?
do. Shoot, I would have to think
I
about it
know.
though.
Think
That's
about it as
insane.
we're talking, and at the end, you can tell us if
Yeah.
there is. But first, tell us about your. Well, I want to hear about your new book first, The Misdirection of Fault Lines. Tell us about that first, and then we'll get into your first book, your debut.
Okay. It is basically a book about 3 different teenage girls who go to an elite tennis tournament, which I hear tennis is very in thanks to Carrie Soto. Is that
Who's Carrie Soto?
it's the no,
Is
it's the
that
I'll
book.
take your
It's the
word
Taylor
for it.
Jenkins Reid book. It's like I don't know if it's just called Carrie Soto. It's something Carrie Soto. I don't know. I heard it's about tennis. People are
Okay.
talking about it. So I'm like,
Oh,
"You like tennis?"
Carrie Soto is back.
That's
That's
what
what
it
it
is. And I'm like,
is.
oh, I also have a tennis book. And I'm into tennis, but you could also read it. So it's about 3 teenage girls who are heading to this elite tennis tournament. And they each have their own sort of like motivations and hangups for competing in them. And they end up as roommates. And so it explores each path that each person has. So the first character is Alice, and she is sort of like the person that feels like they shouldn't be there. Sort of like the wild card. There's always somebody that everyone's like, wow, how did they get in? And she's that person. And so she's got those hangups and all of that. And she doesn't have money like everybody else. And she's kind of there and she doesn't know if she wants to be there. And then there's Violetta, who lives there. She's one of the like tennis academy kids that lives and boards 24/7. And she is like meant to be the next big superstar, and she's the influencer, and she's like the golden child, and she's ready to win. Her mom used to be a professional. It's like, right, heritage, everything's going down. And then their third roommate is Layla, who used to be a top star and then disappeared from the tennis world 2 years ago, and no one knows what happened to her. And now she's back, and she is pissed at everyone and ready to, she's the I'm not here to make friends person on the reality show.
Love it.
I think my most important question is how much does Violetta get paid as an influencer?
I did think about that, and then I was like, I don't know how much influencers get paid. So instead, I went with she gets a lot of free products, which
That's true.
felt reasonable, right? Like I was like, okay, she could like barter for products, and that seems realistic enough.
That's true. And then the other truth is that all influencers are so rich. That's why I'm in my parents' house.
And the free stuff is actually publishing as well, because I get free books all the time now too. I didn't used to. My first full first year of like being a debut author, I was expecting free books all the time. Nobody sent me anything. And now all of a sudden, I've like in the past week, I got like 3 books in the mail for free. It's so exciting.
I'm sorry, what? People are just sending them to you?
Yeah. And they even sent my agent an email asking if they could send me books too, which is so exciting.
Be like, I actually live at 2 residences. This other one is in San Francisco, and just address it to someone else. It's fine.
Address it to my assistant, Anna.
Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
I thought that the getting free books was way cool too. And then the first time I brought home like a huge stack from a convention, I was all excited and I like gave them to my kids, and they were very blasé. Like, oh,
really?
Thanks. And I was like, these aren't even published. And there's like a whole stack and they're free. And you people are supposed to be nerds. You should appreciate this more.
Kids just don't appreciate the value of free books.
Thank you. I know. I'm like,
they really
what? You can just go to the library? Fine, whatever.
Fine, whatever. Oh my gosh. Okay, but The Misdirection of Fault Lines sounds awesome. I like that this is a story that's not, maybe it is like somewhere down the lines, the fault lines perhaps, that is like overtly a rom-com or like a young adult that's like romance centered. I like that there's other stuff going on and it's just about the journey of these girls in this like I'm sure highly competitive environment.
Oh yeah, I don't write YA romance. I should be.
We'll get into that even more with the first book.
They are not romances. Please don't go in thinking they're a romance. No, this is definitely like a friendship story, and it's kind of exploring just the different sort of relationships. I think that tennis is a really interesting like microcosm of sports because it is so wealthy and it is so white and so expensive. And so in this book, all 3 of the girls are Asian American, but sort of like differing types of Asian and amounts of Asian, and sort of like how that affects, I know, well, there's really not a better way to say it, sort of how that affects their journey through this world, because it matters.
I do love that it is like a sister story too. It's like it's just about like them being like kind of learning how to be friends, and it doesn't focus on that romance. It is just more about sisterhood and just like kind of connecting with people on a level that doesn't have to be romantic. And that's, I think, what's so exciting about this. I think there's a lot of kids who aren't looking for romance only kind of plots in YA. I think that there's plenty of people who are looking for YA with romance subplots, or even the whole plot is about romance. But I think that there's an entire market of kids who are like, well, I do want to read things that don't focus on just the romantic stuff. So I am excited for kids to get to read this one. Especially, you're right, like the microcosm of the tennis world. And it is a very specific type. Like, even I've been reading, I think I'm like halfway through it right now. And just, I know you made up this tennis invitational. It's
Bastille.
Is the school called Bastille too? Or is it just the invitational?
It's like a tennis academy. Right?
Yeah.
It sounds so real.
It does. And it's like, just like I think it's in like the first couple of pages, you're like, it's weird that it looks like somebody's idea of what France looks like put in Central Florida. And I was like,
I love that.
That is absolutely something that would happen. This feels so realistic.
I mean, if it was going to be anywhere, it was going to be Florida.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, who would throw a bunch of money somewhere to make something hideous? Florida
would.
Yeah,
Florida
it works
would.
for Disney. Why not for the tennis elites?
Exactly.
Have you ever heard people use the phrase, like, it looks like they drew something from memory? Like, it sounds like it would be like, this school looks like if someone drew France from memory.
It's like the back half of that horse illustration where they're like, the front half is done and then the back half is a sketch.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like I would go to like Brandy Melville and buy a t-shirt that's this big that says Bastille tennis with like 2 tennis things. Like, that feels, honestly, I think you could make some great merch for this. And you know who would buy it? Me.
Yeah.
Graphic design will be my passion. I mean,
all Comic Sans.
See, if this were not a podcast, I could pull out. So my mom made for all of us when we became adults. We had all these tennis t-shirts from all these tournaments, right? You get a free t-shirt and they're almost always hideous. And so she took all of these t-shirts and she stitched them into a quilt. And they're so fun to see because, I mean, you can see them and you'll be like, oh, that was the 80s. Oh, that was the 90s. I mean, the design is really very reflective of the times.
That's amazing. Wait, so you did play tennis like throughout your life?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's very cool. So did you compete in competitions like this, like the one you described?
Sort of. I mean, this one's a fake one, but yes. I mean, I started playing tennis as a kid. I think I played my first tournament at like 7. And then I played all the way up through college. So, and then I stopped for a long time because I was burned out, like so many other college athletes.
Fair enough. I have my worst sports story, the one that I tell when people ask if I play them and why I don't, is tennis related, because my dad put me in tennis lessons. He really tried very hard to find a sport that I would like. So this was certainly not the first one, but I was so bad that my instructor thought I might be left-handed. I'm not, but he was like, let's just try. And so he had me play left-handed. That also didn't work. I don't know why he thought that. He was, in retrospect, probably like a high schooler. So he was like, let's just see what happens.
To be fair, so I've also coached tennis and I have done that and they have turned out to be left-handed. So it's a legitimate thing where you're like, wow, this person's really bad. Maybe they're left-handed. And it does happen sometimes.
That's
Maybe
so
I'm left-handed.
We're finding out something new.
Although it's also weird because there are people that play sports left-handed but are right-handed, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Like Nadal was his uncle, Rafael Nadal. Yes, nod. Do you know who that is? Okay.
Everybody knows who Rafael Nadal is.
Just
yes.
to know. Okay. All right. So he's like one of the greatest tennis players of all time. And
Okay.
he is known for being a lefty, but he is
Mhm.
not left-handed. And so his uncle said when he was training him to play tennis, he purposely trained him to be a lefty because lefties are so much harder to play. So he's right-handed in everything in life except tennis.
And then
think
he ended
that
up being
there's
exceptional at tennis?
And
That's wild.
I mean,
I
these
think there's
people train
also
their whole lives for this, right? Like you don't accidentally become a pro tennis player.
Right.
that should be a rom-com. Somebody who accidentally becomes a pro tennis player, and it's just like, oh, I just have this natural gift. That's a villain, actually.
And
That is a
Yeah,
villain
yeah.
for
No, it
because
would be like that.
everybody who works so hard would be so pissed off.
No, you know what
Like,
it'd be like? It would be
fuck
like that woman snowboarder. Do you remember what happened in the last Olympics? There was like this woman who qualified for the Olympics in the half pipe, like skiing or snowboarding, and essentially she was like a beginner skier. Like she couldn't do
Yeah.
anything, and essentially she had qualified because she had paid to go to all these international competitions, and essentially you qualify if you place in the top X number of international competitions. So she basically bought her way in by flying to all these low populated tournaments and then qualifying for the Olympics. And people were so mad. You should Google it. It's like,
Wow.
it's offensive how bad she
That's
is.
That's like the girl who bought her way onto the New York Times bestseller list a few years ago.
Way to
Who
work
did
back
that?
into the books. I'm sorry. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. We got to bring it back to books somehow. And it was a YA novel, too.
That's why it was scandal. If it were nonfiction, they'd be like, oh, everyone does that.
Yeah. Well, nonfiction, they all have the little plus signs.
I know,
next
and
to
they
them.
all do it. They all
And
buy themselves onto it.
this one she didn't, though, because I think the cutoff for bulk buying is like, I think it's either 5,000 or 2,000.
Wow. Why in my head was I thinking it was like 20?
No.
Wow,
Like,
20 is a
this
lot of
is-
books at once. You're like, it's 5,000.
Maybe it is that. I don't know. But she was basically calling bookstores. We'll have Phil Stamper on the podcast at some point because he's the one who kind of exposed the whole thing happening because he was working at Penguin at the time. I think it was Penguin. But like there is a certain way that you can buy under, like just under whatever the bulk purchase is. And she was calling independent bookstores and buying in bulk just under that number. And
Wow.
knowing that those independent bookstores, she would call all of them and ask if they report to the New York Times. And if yes, then she would buy a certain amount of her own books from them. And it was her first book. It was self-published and it didn't have any marketing,
Mhm.
but she was friends with the guy from American Pie. And
Wait, which one?
he's not the main character, and he's not Stifler, and he's I think the nice guy. Whoever was with Tara Reid, I think. He was going to make it into a movie, and she was going to star in the movie, and they had this whole plan.
Oh, and she was
and then
star in
Phil
it.
Stamper, yeah. And they were going to sell the books at Comic-Cons too after it became a New York Times bestseller. And because of that, New York Times does not go by sales anymore. That's why it's a curated list.
Wait,
all
it
because
wasn't a
of this
curated
book.
list before that then? This is
No,
why
it was
became a
like
curated list?
it was basically you could buy your way onto it, and people would
Wow.
probably do that, but it's like they had a little bit of marketing behind them. This book, there was nothing. No one had heard about it.
You know, it's really hard. I'm kind of torn. On one hand, like, you gotta respect the hustle. I mean, that is some
Yeah.
serious dedication. Like, if you're gonna subvert the system, she went all in. Like, she was like, I'm gonna order
Yeah.
in bulk, I'm gonna star in the movie, and like, I mean, it's hard to be mad at that kind of like zest.
Yeah, that's a solid hustle. But also all I'm thinking of is the like if her book was like $15 and she spent all this money buying them, why didn't she just use that money towards a marketing budget?
Because this is
So it's
more
because
effective, I guess. I mean, think about it. Then you're like,
Yes,
I'm a
yeah.
number one New York Times bestseller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a shore like thing that you would actually that's wild.
And I think at the time it was like it would have been shocking to see this self-published book just debut at number 1 on the New York Times list. Like that is
Right.
its own marketing. And I mean, technically it was its own marketing thing because then her career went down the toilet. But it's also she was spending all of this money on the books knowing she was getting a discount on them since it was like just under that bulk buy. And then on top of that, she was getting all of the books, and then her plan was to go around to Comic-Cons with it and sell it at full like face value. So she was actually making money on it, probably.
And she had a full business plan, apparently.
Yeah.
Wow.
Business schools would love her. They would be like, look at her. This is like the epitome
An
of
entrepreneur. Yeah.
Maybe it was the American Pie guy's idea. He was bankrolling the whole thing as a producer.
That's so wild.
I love that you just referring to him as the American Pie guy.
I don't know his name.
No, I
didn't know his name when he was in American Pie. Oh, it's Eugene Levy. That's his name. No, I'm just joking.
Oh,
knew what that was. That would be so upsetting.
Oh my
god! I was like, wait, what?
It's like of all the people.
Just kidding. Eugene Levy had nothing to do with that. I need to say I was just kidding.
Oh my god.
Producer Matt wants to know which character Kevin. I think
it's important to know. I know because you know why? Because Kevin Kline also did a movie about authors.
Not that one. He played the character Kevin. This guy played the character.
Oh, it's the
Kevin,
little one.
Yes, the little one.
Oh,
I forgot he was shorter.
Rookie of the Year.
Yes, he was in Rookie of the Year. Yes, that one. Thomas Ian Nicholas. Okay.
Wait, Rookie of the Year. That's the one set in Minnesota, isn't it?
I don't know. I just remember he breaks his arm, right? And then just has the really good fastball.
Yeah, and doesn't he like pitch for the Twins? There are only so many things that have Minnesota on them, and as I'm from Minnesota, I am obligated to know all of them. And I want to be clear before you ask, Fargo is in North Dakota. Thank you.
We know.
No, you know what? People don't know, and they ask all the time, and they'll be like, "Oh, don't you know? Are you from Fargo?" And I'm like, "Hey, that's rude. I don't make fun of your accent, okay?" And Fargo's in North Dakota, so get an atlas.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Get in, loser! Mean Girls is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Join Katie Heron as she meets the plastics in Tina Fey's new twist on the modern classic. Get ready for more of the rumors, backstabbing, and jokes you loved from the original movie with some fetch surprises. Rated PG-13. Wear pink and head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.